So welcome to this brief overview or introduction to Resilient Leaders Elements and the coaching model we'll be using together. The point of this presentation is for you to understand the context as to how this coaching framework came about, but also for you to begin to understand and process some of the key language so that we can use it when we begin to walk our coaching journey together. So the framework for Resilient Leadership Elements comes from two people, Rachel McGill and Jeremy Mead. So Rachel is ex-Army. She was an Army officer at Sandhurst for a very long time. And Jeremy used to work in the people management team globally at Unilever. So they met and they co-created and collaborated on the delivery of a leadership development coaching model. And the idea of their work over the last couple of decades is really about this understanding of what does it mean to be a resilient leader. So their definition is that a resilient leader knows where they are strong, but also knows their own areas for development. Furthermore, a resilient leader also knows what takes them from pressure to stress. So this diagram here is the urgency continuum, and it's the fact that we're constantly moving and operating up and down this continuum of moving from that stability and that security of equilibrium to that stress and that chaos and uncertainty. And once we become aware of how we show up and how we react to the different stages of this process, we are more able to then counterbalance or to rebalance ourselves in the moment, and we can reframe the situation when we know how we're feeling and we know how we are responding. So by using the RLE framework, a resilient leader develops and has the confidence in both who they are and what they do, and they get that balance in those two facets of their identity, the personal and the professional. And by truly understanding who we are and what motivates us and what stresses us out, a resilient leader is then better able to create, to build and to take opportunities, but also better able to bounce back and know that we'll always find a way through because we've navigated that uncertainty, that change and that crisis before. And we have got that toolkit and we have got those strategies. In the moment of being stressed or being under pressure, we perhaps forget that. And this muscle we're going to flex around resilient leadership means that that skill set is there and the muscle memory is there to remind us that we can do this. This just summarises those different parts I just talked you through, that a resilient leader knows where they're strong, knows their areas of development, knows what takes them from pressure to stress and how to rebalance. A resilient leader has confidence in both who they are and what they do so that they can create, build and take opportunities. A resilient leader bounces back knowing that they will find a way through uncertainty, change and even crisis. Go a bit deeper into what does this actually mean and what are the resilient leaders elements so that we can have this shared language and shared understanding moving forwards. Part of the resilient leaders elements context is the idea of us really beginning to reflect on and think about the difference between what I do and who I am. If you think about how you introduce yourself, we quite often lead with the what, the role we perform, as opposed to the who, the person behind that. One of my coaching frames is about the soul, not the role, and it really makes me think about this. So what I do is that understanding where you are, where you want to be, and what that goal is going to achieve for you and what it's going to look and feel like when you focus on those results, when you achieve those results. Whereas the who I am is about that emotion, the internal mechanisms, the motivation, the aspirations, the how you feel about it, and being really positive and really purposeful. And I quite often think about it through the lens of Ikigai and that idea of the alignment of who we are and what we do. So this slide brings together the four elements and it shows how these four elements overlap into those two focus points of what I do and who I am. So clarity of direction is the vision we have and the strategy we have to fulfill that vision in the future. It's about how we communicate that strategic intent and how we unify other people and align them to that vision, how we communicate what it is we're trying to achieve, and how we also model that determination we have to keep going in the face of adversity. So how we navigate those obstacles and those barriers. Awareness is then that kind of thinking about the triangulation of self-awareness, the awareness of others, and the awareness of the environment, and thinking about the individual and collective motivations, thinking about the diversity within the team and the context in which we work, also thinking about where the individual and collective strengths are, but also the areas for development, and how we utilise and leverage that information, that knowledge, to really be agile and to be able to adjust and adapt to those forces and those marketplace changes. If we think about what's happened in the last year, like how have we adapted and how have we sort of modified what we do in light of the global pandemic and COVID-19? And being aware of ourselves then takes us into the element of leadership presence. And leadership presence is really thinking about like, who are we as we perform these roles? It really, for me, is the integration between who I am and what I do. So how do we stay true to ourselves? How do we stay values led and values aligned? How do we operate within our ethical code so that we don't feel compromised? And how do we get that balance right of being a service to others, but also bringing that focus and that bias for achievement to the things that we are doing? And how we sort of like collectively raise the bar, I guess, and how we model, visibly model the consistencies of what we want to see, so that other people are aware of our presence, not only when we're in the room, but also that legacy piece about the presence we create, and the systems we create, and when we're not there, our presence is still felt. And the final one is about resilient decision making. So this is really about the different ways we make decisions, and how we make decisions in the moment when we're feeling resilient, but also when we're not feeling resilient, and how those different decisions, from micro decisions to macro decisions, take each of those ideas we have from concept to reality, and how we use those decision-making processes to challenge our own biases, but also the biases of others, and how we also think about the impact those decisions have on the individual, the collective, and the environment in which we're working. And also something that doesn't always get thought about is how we vary the pace of that decision-making process, and also the style, thinking about bespoking, I guess, the decisions we make, so that they are specific to the people we are working with, but showing that awareness of perhaps the decisions they need us to make and how they need us to make them to maximise the resonance of those decisions with our teams. So we're now going to drill down into each of these four elements, and under each element there are three facets, and these three facets really bring the elements to life. So underpinning the element of clarity direction, we have the triangulation of strategic intent, unifying purpose, and determination. The strategic intent is perhaps one that people struggle with sometimes. That is, what is that vision? What is that audacious goal we are working towards? And how can we then map that back? And what are the KPIs and the milestones that we need to sort of like build into the journey in order to fulfill that strategic intent? Unifying purpose is how we then create alignment with the people around us, how we articulate that why, as Simon Sinek would say, of the strategic intent, and how we enroll and enlist other people to go on that journey with us, so that it becomes our collective vision and our shared responsibility, as opposed to an individual one. And then the determination is how we can see the clarity through the fog, how we can stay focused and determined, and unyielding, I guess, that we're not compromising our strategic intent as those obstacles and as those barriers get put in our way. We find the creativity and the innovation to navigate them and to adjust and work around them. So ultimately, the impact of the element of clarity direction and the facets is about us knowing where we're going, why we're going there, and how we're going to get there, and what it's going to look like when we ultimately get to that goal, so that each individual person knows their place and their purpose and how they can contribute. So if we drill down under the element of awareness, we have the three facets of self, others, and environment. So self is really that looking introspectively, internally, thinking about our internal mechanisms, what drives us, what stresses us out, and how often do we actually stop and reflect on how we are. The latter one is others, and thinking about those people around us, which quite often we give more priority and more time and attention to than we do to ourselves. How well do we know those individuals? How well do we know what makes them tick and what motivates them? What shapes them, their belief systems and their biases? That the more we know them, the better we can work with them and alongside them, and we are aware of perhaps some of those triggers that might unsettle them at different points. And then the environmental awareness, or I like to call it contextual literacy, is that understanding of the kind of the macro, understanding the organisational systems and processes and hierarchies, understanding the culture in which we are operating, and also being aware of and mindful of, I guess, the kind of the marketplace pressures and the changing things around us, which then shape and determine not only how we show up, but also how we perform and how our organisations sit within that kind of that global workplace context. And the impact of sort of like heightening our awareness is that every single person is unlocked to work to their best. And we become higher performing, high productivity, and more motivated when there's that real understanding and awareness of each individual jigsaw piece that comes together to make that full picture. And really it's about sort of appreciating difference and leveraging that difference to bring harmony, but to also bring that medley of strengths to a team, so that we can all then work together on really efficient and effective systems and processes which enable us all to individually and collectively serve and achieve the goals that we're working towards. Under the element of leadership presence, we have the three facets of authentic, serving, and intentional. So thinking about authentic, it's this idea of having integrity, walking the walk as well as talking the talk, having that conviction in what we do, and operating within that values and ethical belief system so that we remain true to ourselves. Thinking about being in service and serving other people, it's that awareness of the needs of other people, whether they are our customers or our team or our personal and domestic kind of relationships, and balancing those different priorities are perhaps placed on us so that we can demonstrate that commitment as a leader in investing in and developing other people and anticipating their needs along their journeys. And being intentional is about really staying focused and aligned to the core purpose of the organisation in which we're working, whether that's us working for ourselves or within a bigger team, and being really purposeful, really positive, and sort of how we manage criticism and take that criticism constructively and learn from it, as opposed to it inhibiting us. So that then it serves us, and our intentionality brings that energy and that bias for achievement where we are focused on the kind of the successes and amplifying and making more abundant the positives rather than that deficit mindset of focusing on what is perhaps wrong or a weakness. So as I said already, the impact of having presence is that even when you're not in the room, people know what you'd be saying and thinking. It's also about knowing who's best place to lean in and to take the lead, or to lean out and let somebody else take the lead if it is their specialism or their area of expertise, but with that support perhaps beside or behind, so that we can then collectively lead to get the best results and the most effective outcome. And the more we are aware of each other, the better able we are to then anticipate each other's actions and act accordingly. So that kind of intuitive leadership kicks in as some of the understanding becomes more intrinsic. And the final element of resilient decision making is underpinned by the facets of creative decisions, robust decisions, and versatile decisions, and thinking about that range and that multiplicity of different types of decision making frames. So the creative decisions, it's not about being creative, but it's about our ability to innovate and our ability to be pioneers and take those ideas from concept to reality, and perhaps to disrupt some of the things that are traditionally done. The second one, being robust, is that ability to see the facts, see the evidence, use our intellect rather than our intuition to bring rigor, and to have contingency plans, because sometimes the plan we might have might not be possible. So having a plan B and a plan C to fall back on in case of need. And being versatile or being flexible is about having that range of options and responding to the needs of a team or of a situation, and of that varying urgency of different priorities, so that we can think and operate at the appropriate level to where we're working, but also to the projects perhaps we're working on. And the impact of being able to vary our resilient decision making is about the fact that it's that confidence in making decisions and making the right decision at the right time with the right people. And sometimes the right decision is actually to say no and to do nothing, and to have the confidence and the conviction to actually just take that pause and to hold that line. And to have those contingency options available, so that if something unexpected does get thrown at you, you are able to deal with that uncertainty in an effective and confident way, because you know that you have overcome uncertainty in your leadership before, and you know that your decision making in that moment was robust, versatile and creative, and got you the solution or the resolution that you needed in that scenario. So thank you for picking me to be your coach. I'm really looking forward to working with you. The next part of the process is that I will send you a link to the website and a login name and password, and this will then set up your individual RLDP, the Resilient Leaders Development Programme. It will ask you to go through a number of steps to basically do your baseline self-assessment, and this will then give us the foundations from which we will have our first coaching conversation. Any problems, give me a shout. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.